Real estate investing is not always easy. It takes risk and things do go wrong. One of you guys reached out to me after your first deal resulted in a rental that has a negative cash flow, and the second one, after a couple months worth of work that you still have to get through, is looking like a $20,000 to $30,000 loss. Let's talk about what went wrong. I spoke at a conference a few weeks back for Dean Rogers, which I don't typically speak at events because I don't really like to travel unless it's for fun or for family, but Dean's a great guy. So I was like, sure, man, I'll come out. One of the guys that heard me speak, I shared kind of some low moments in my personal life as well as in my real estate investing career, sent me an email with kind of his current situation. And that's the first project ended up in a rental that has a negative cash flow to it. And the second project still has a couple months worth of work that has to be done and is going to result in a $20,000 to $30,000 loss. I've been there. I've lost money on a deal, and it really sucks when you see it coming on the horizon and you still have to show up to get the thing through. I get a kick out of folks that have like the get a real job angle to those of us that are in real estate online. I bet most of them have never paid $20,000 to $30,000 to get somebody to buy a property from them. So he sent me kind of this long list of lessons. I was like, hey man, I'd be curious, right? What lessons did you take from this? And honestly, they're very similar to some of my own lessons and some of my own personal rules. So I figured I would go through, kind of share down the list, his explanation and my commentary on these. If you're in real estate and you haven't lost money yet, be sure to pay attention. If you're in real estate or you're a newbie wanting to get into real estate, this could save you a lot of heartache. So he kind of did this in categories. The first one is on purchasing. The second is on underwriting. The third is on construction management. There's a lot on that one. The fourth is on construction. Fifth is on personal and kind of like mindset, health. And then lastly is on business. So we're going to kind of hit these one by one. On purchasing, stick to your underwriting and pass on deals where someone else will buy it for more. He says on both of these projects, the seller and the agent respectively negotiated prices up at the last minute before close. Instead of sticking to my underwriting and passing on the deal, I agreed to the higher buy price and convinced myself that I could still turn a profit. Perhaps I could have, but I greatly increased my risk. Guys, if you're ever selling yourself on doing a deal, or if you're ever at that spot that like you need a deal, it's been a while, be very, very careful. Your judgment's clouded. I'm a really big fan of using a free tool like Deal Check or something similar and having rules you stick to of like the minimum profit that you'll accept can kind of help keep you out of these situations where we maybe sell ourselves on buying something we shouldn't have. Which ties into his second point, which I will shout from the rooftops of it's better to lose out on a deal than to buy a bad deal. 100% wholeheartedly agree. Sometimes the best deal you do is the one you don't do. He says, I wanted very badly to be consistent with my self-image as a real estate investor and jumped into deals that were not good in order to have some activity in my investing versus doing nothing. I needed to be aggressively patient, take up massive action to line up my deals, but be confident in the numbers before committing to a purchase, all while waiting for the right deal. I have nothing to prove to anyone, including myself. Wholeheartedly agree on not doing the bad deal and like you don't have anything to prove. Oftentimes where I see investors make mistakes is they see somebody else talk about buy and hold or development or Airbnb or something that they really haven't done, and they kind of force it to get into it. I've got a good friend of mine that landed a seller finance deal that he'd locked up like $90K for like 5 years. It wasn't even a good deal. He just heard people doing creative deals and wanted to get in on the action. So just because somebody else is doing something doesn't mean that you should lose focus of what you're doing. His third point was don't take on problems of the seller. And this is harder to do than you would imagine. So the first project, the seller had to sell prior to foreclosure. He gave his word he would close and let his emotions guide the buying process and ended up overpaying for the property. He let the seller's financial burdens become his own. While he strives to be a man of his word, financially hurting himself killed his ability to serve and help more people. I am a sucker for the little old lady that doesn't have anywhere to go And if it's just up to me, if I'm not using any sort of a calculator, I will overpay for that property 9 times out of 10 and twice on Sunday. What I'm talking about here is more advanced than just like the 75% rule. I really, really recommend you build out or find some sort of calculator. I've mentioned it already, but dealcheck.io is free. Don't have like an affiliate link or anything you need to use, but it's a great tool for making sure everything's accounted for in the offers that you're making. Moving over to point 2 here, prepare a bid sheet to make sure that all of your general contractors are bidding out the same scope of work. Here's what he had to say. I obtained multiple bids from general contractors prior to them beginning work on project number 2, but there were major items missed. Roof, HVAC, foundation that killed the project. I reviewed each line item on the bids for pricing sanity. For example, should a kitchen cost me $6,000? But extra due diligence may have highlighted where the contractor plan was lacking. Zero shame here. I have 100% done a 6-figure remodel before and not noticed on the bid I got it didn't include the HVAC system until I was getting ready to put the property on the market, and it was in Pensacola, Florida in summer. None of us are perfect, but by writing out your own scope of work versus just doing like a walkthrough with a contractor and being like, make it pretty, it can save you a lot of heartache and make sure that your expectations are met. This goes for like life as well as business, but one of my favorite quotes is uncommunicated expectations are predetermined resentments. So effectively, if I don't tell somebody that I'm needing or expecting something, but I expect them to do it, I'm setting them up for failure. Same thing goes with your contractors and your spouse. Next, we have assume until verified that all major systems need to be replaced in vacant properties without power. Hope is not a strategy. If I can't verify a repair cost, I assume it will need to be done. I personally try to do a full-blown inspection on every property that I'm buying, and that includes like power needs to be on, water needs to be on. If there's gas, it needs to be on. I want to know if there's issues with those systems before those issues are my problem. The next one he has here is underwrite your property where you're hoping to exit in like the median sales price, not at the absolute top. To the gentleman that sent me this list, I seriously hope that you see this video. The amount of wisdom you've picked up on these two is absolutely incredible. This is one of my personal things I do. I'm always going for the median value if I get more cool, but I don't need to match a record comp in order to turn a profit. It's much easier for me to have a nicer, better product that's priced more affordably because I got a better deal than hoping I'm able to match that one outlier. The last one he has on underwriting is smaller properties in cheaper neighborhoods are harder to profit from and need steeper margins. My first flip I ever did was a 600 square foot house in the hood, and I ended up selling it to homevestors and having to bring $7,500 to the closing table to get out of it. So yes, I lost money on my first flip I took down. I should have never flipped a 600 square foot house in the hood with a shared driveway, but I broke most of these rules. Next, we're going to get into contractor management. First one he's got is communication is going to be the best during the bidding process and will likely decline afterwards. I think this goes for most things in life, right? We tend to put our best foot forward for that first impression or when we're trying to get the sale. But oftentimes life gets in the way, things come up, and maybe we don't quite show up the same as things go. I've found this to be super true in a lot of areas, but construction in particular. He has on here, before any money's exchanged, they're the most motivated to win the job. If the contractor can't be bothered to communicate effectively before the project starts, they will not improve once it does. Wholeheartedly agree. On that note, you want to make sure you're getting things like W-9, proof of insurance, contractor license, that sort of stuff before the capital change hands, not afterwards. It's a lot harder to get somebody's tax info so the IRS knows what to collect from them after the fact, 6 months later. Like, they're not responding to that email. Second is hire slow and fire fast. I would agree. I think that goes for pretty much any aspect of the business. You want to be careful that you're not hiring like a heartbeat, that you really are. It's the right person, the right role. Most of the mistakes I've had that involved like staff, employees, or even business partners would have been alleviated if I had just done better due diligence. Checking references, seeing if they have criminal records, that sort of stuff. The third one he's got here is don't rely on verbal bids for your underwriting. You want to make sure that when you're buying a property, they're going to be at that price point that they told you they'd be before you agree to buy the place. Next, he's got get multiple bids and be wary of any outliers. On the second project, the one we're probably going to lose 20 to 30 on, he went with the middle priced bid, but the reputable trusted GC in the market had the highest price, which turned out to be accurate in the end. Next, he's got meet with contractor to align expectations regarding scope, quality, and timeline. I think that kind of goes back to what we touched on a little bit earlier with writing your own scope. Like go line by line, room by room. Hey, when you're painting, we're removing the trim. Hey, when we're done, we're reinstalling the hardware. We're not painting over it. I had a beautiful 5 unit I did, and we had these like really, really nice crystal doorknobs, and they sprayed over them at one of our projects. That was a lot of fun. Next, he's got trust but verify that the contractors completed the work via walking the property, hiring a project manager, or a trusted independent advisor. Contractors can be selective on which photos and how they present the photos of their work, which don't tell the full story of the project. I don't know if I've ever shared this once, but I was once in Hawaii with my wife and had a contractor literally push like carpet to the corner of a room and take a picture of the corner of the room to show me that it was done to get final payment. When I got back to Indiana and actually inspected it, it was literally just a corner pushed in. And he was like, no, I didn't do anything sketchy. I just wanted you to see how it was going to look. So 100%, I've learned this one the hard way. Next, he's got do not pay any GC ahead on work ever. Nearly all of my problems with construction on project number 2 could have been avoided by paying once the work had been completed, or maybe a small amount of materials to get started. If the outlying cash is too high for the general contractor to start the work, they're likely not well capitalized to operate this sort of business, and the payments need to be smaller and more frequent. Maintain control over the money at all times and allow for the firing of workers quickly if needed. Dude, I seriously do hope you see this. Like, this is a masterclass on what this business looks like. I personally like to look for the guys that can afford to carry some costs. That's a good indicator on the actual health of the business, their maturity and finances, and all of that good stuff. I literally just got a comment on another YouTube video that was like, hey man, I'm ahead with a contractor. What's going to happen? Like, well, you're probably losing some money and bringing somebody else in to finish that project, unfortunately. It's an expensive and painful lesson. Next, he's got inspect what you expect. Don't rely on the word of the GC for the quality and status of the project. Inspect it yourself, hire somebody to do it, or have an independent agent that you trust with investing experience walk the property and verify all of the items. Guys, these are your projects. Nobody's ever going to care about your business more than you. So if something doesn't look right, you need to say something. If the paint's like running and dripping, like, hey man, this isn't going to cut it. If things aren't trim or like flush, right? You need to call it out. Oftentimes I see a lot of like attempts at stuff that when we call out, we end up with what we actually wanted originally. Next, he kind of rehits a previous point. Use more frequent, smaller pay periods to ensure money management and the contractor work quality. Agree. We have kind of another recap here too. If the communication starts to slip, move to fire. They work for me, not the other way around. I agree. I'm a big fan of not having to chase. Similarly, I return the favor. Like if somebody does work for me, I am very prompt to pay when it is complete. I don't ever want to be the guy that my vendors are chasing because then they don't really want to work for me. Next, he has verify all pricing with additional bids or a trusted advisor. It says the general contractor lied and tried to charge me $12K for a $6K roof. Should have fired then. And $7K for a $4K foundation repair. Always get multiple bids. I don't know that I'd view that so much as lying as more as just like what sort of profit margin they're looking for. There are some folks that'll operate on these really thin margins, but then that becomes the reason that like they're robbing Peter to pay Paul. So sometimes it is better to pay a little bit more to get that person that is well capitalized because they are turning a profit. There is a lot of margin in construction, so you want to make sure you're not getting taken to the cleaners. But at the same time, like you do kind of want to be working with somebody that's financially stable. I get it. Like the roof was twice the cost. The foundation was $3,000 more. Sometimes it's also just they don't want to do that aspect of the job. So they'll bid it at the point that's like, if you want me to do this, I'll do it for this price, right? So it could be a little bit of that. Next, he's got photos are deceptive and don't show product quality, layout, workmanship, etc. Specify the material quality you want used on projects. It's a really good idea in your bidding process to be very particular about what you're expecting, like what kind of flooring, what kind of paint, what finish, etc. Just that way there's no like misunderstandings. This one's also super solid, and I got this tip from a buddy of mine that does construction management, and that's get your schedule of work and the scope of work to make sure there's a logical order of things being done. You probably don't want the flooring guy to come in the day before the paint guy. Ideally, the paint's getting done and then the floor's going in, so you don't have to worry about drips or spills or little damage. Next, we've got on construction. So beware of older homes as materials may no longer be available. An example would be like matching older cedar siding shingles. If keeping older damaged materials such as siding, beware that the materials to match the broken likely won't be manufactured anymore. Results in either total replacement or having crappy looking substitutes. I personally don't run into a lot of like cedar siding in my market. I have seen it though with like brickwork we've had patched where the patch doesn't quite match or the grout doesn't look right, and it's very obvious and patchy looking if you don't just like regrout or stain or paint or something like that. Second, he recommends avoiding properties and making sure they don't have asbestos prior to purchase. That way you're not dealing with like remediation, abatement, all of that sort of stuff. This third one, he has horizontal movement of walls greater than 2 inches requires straightening walls, which is very costly, but under 2 inches can be stabilized with a steel I-beam wall brace. $250 to $500 installed with warranty. Foundation cracks can be epoxied for $10 a linear line, but not waterproofing. I've done a lot of properties that have needed some pretty gnarly foundation work, and I think it's just kind of finding the right people for that kind of work. I mean, we've done like the carbon fiber bracing and excavation and rebuilding block walls, all kinds of stuff over the years. As long as you have like structural engineer sign off and like warranty on the work, in my experience, it hasn't made them all that much harder to sell. However, I think that will change as the market becomes more of a buyer's market. If I've got 2 identical houses priced close to each other and one has a solid foundation, the other one has one that's been heavily repaired, probably going to go to the one that looks like it hasn't had issues in the past, whether that's right or wrong. Let's talk about the personal side of what he shared now. And I think this is really neglected on YouTube, on Instagram. Everybody kind of portrays this like, oh, I'm making money hand over fist. Things are going great. One of the things I've found in CCF is we have these conversations pretty often. Like, hey, I've got a lot of money. It's just all out. And like, I can't pay my light bill with equity in my rentals or potential profits. Often business really is a good like magnifier of where you're at mentally and what's going on. I found it to be a very brutal, honest mirror of your character, your flaws, your confidence, your beliefs, and all of that. The first thing he's got is failing a project doesn't mean that you failed as an investor. I would also add as a person. He goes on to say, my dream has always been to be a successful real estate investor. I told everyone that I was working to build up my real estate business, quit my job, became a full-time investor. I feel great shame that my projects have failed. I've lost money. I'm further away from financial freedom than I had been before I bought any real estate investments. Personal homes have gone great. I'm not a failure, even though I've experienced failures. I only fail if I quit. I'm still capable of success and of my dreams. Guys, if you're watching this, like the video, leave a comment, leave him some encouragement. If you haven't been at a point like this, you might very well likely find yourself there on a project. I would even go so far as to say, be very careful where you place your identity. I am someone that invests in real estate, but I'm not a real estate investor. That is not the core of what makes up Ryan. I see guys do this with their business, with their spouses, with cars. Like, what happens when the business fails? You end up then having these conversations like, well, am I a failure? What does this mean? Is this embarrassing? One other takeaway I would have here, I'm not a big fan of going full time until your real estate business is so successful that it's costing you money to not fully focus on it. I personally did a very similar path, $3,000 to my name, and I was like, F it, I'm going to figure this out. The following 12 months was absolutely brutal, and I wish I'd done things a little bit differently. Next, he's got, do not make decisions from an emotional frame. Deactivate the parasympathetic nervous system via breath work, cold shower, etc. I hope I said that right. I was homeschooled. I didn't graduate high school or go to college. Emotions are important information. They are road signs and check engine lights on your journey that let you know things are out of alignment, but you can't make decisions from an emotionally charged state. Unless absolutely necessary, wait to make significant decisions until you're in a rational and calm state of mind. This is where I'm a big fan of being in a community or having mentors locally that you can call on for like, what should I do in this situation? One of my favorite quotes, I think it was Thomas Jefferson, is I suffered often in life and most of it never happened. I think oftentimes we can get ourselves worked up into these like giant, emotional spirals into negativity when you might ask somebody, they give you advice, you try it, and it ends up being a non-event or a non-issue. So seeking wise counsel is always super beneficial. 100% agree with this next point. And that's be open and honest about your mental and emotional struggles so that others can help. My shame, anxiety, and embarrassment made me withdraw socially and push away those that can help me, but I couldn't do it alone. The people which I thought would or were judging me did not respond that way when I opened up. In hindsight, I don't think they cared about my business success or dreams. They just wanted to make sure that I was happy and safe, which I wasn't. Some surprising people have rallied around me, for which I'm extremely grateful. I need to cultivate relationships and try not to lone wolf my way to success all the time. Dude, I 100% commend you for your emotional intelligence, this email that you've sent. 2016 was the year that I went full time, and it was absolutely brutal. It did not get better for me until I admitted that I didn't know everything and that I needed help. And similarly to you, I was not safe. Back then, I was very much looking at like an out, which looked like going to Bali where $3,000 would get me really far, but I realized it was a lot darker than that, and my bourbon consumption at the time definitely matched. Next, he's got here, be kind to yourself and proud of the action you took, even if the outcome was unfavorable. I found it helpful to try and be grateful to my past self for taking the risk and starting the project. I made the best decision with the information that I had at the time. I wish things had gone differently, but I will and am surviving. If I am successful in the future, the same self will be responsible for that success. I very much try to not live with regrets and assume at the time I made the best decision that I could have made, even if later on I'm able to reflect and be like, wow, I really could have done some things differently, or I didn't show up well, or I made some bad decisions along the way. I try to learn, which is literally what I'd asked him. Like, what did you learn from these projects versus harping on like, oh, I messed up. Next, he's got a failure can be turned to your advantage if you look at the financial loss as tuition. Dude, this is like incredibly solid. Wholeheartedly agree. I looked at that $7,500 as thank God I learned this lesson on this cheap of a house and not on a much more expensive house. I had a property I JV'd somebody with, and like title went into their name, not mine, but I'd gotten the insurance. The property was involved in arson, like mine and 6 other houses. It was crazy. It was a cheap house in the hood. It was like a $30,000 loss though. And I remember being like, holy crap. Okay. And then thinking to myself, thank God this happened on this and not on a $3 million apartment complex deal or something. Or like the property was vacant. Nobody got hurt. Like loss of life without insurance. That's not a situation I ever want to be in. He closes with 2 points on business management. The first is deal flow. Marketing and sales is greater than flipping. Always be marketing. If a flip is your only active income for your business, then the failure of a flip is an existential crisis to the business. If it's only one of many flips, wholesales, other income streams, it's more easy to deal with both financially and mentally. Wholeheartedly agree. We talk about this thing in CCF. I call it the 6-figure hamster wheel. Investor markets, they get leads, they pause the marketing, they focus on the leads, they get a deal, they get that deal through the pipeline, they turn around and they have nothing. So they have to restart the machine every quarter. always be marketing. That was what took me from doing 6 deals in 2016 to 74 the next. I got help and I started marketing consistently. The final point he closes out with here is construction, finances, and operations all need checks and balances. Have a project manager, agent, or someone else verify the work of the GC. Do this for all business functions to mitigate risk. To the person that sent me this email, I'm going to personally scholarship you into CCF. So you're not going to have any sort of cost to join. And on top of that, I chatted with my co-owner at Ballpoint Marketing, and we're also going to fund some marketing on your behalf to help you get out of this hole. We've been where you're at. I honestly, dude, love and appreciate your honesty in this. And furthermore, I'm focused on doing good business with good people. You're clearly a good businessman and a good person that made a couple mistakes, and I'd love to be a small part of helping you right that ship. Thank you guys for taking the time to watch this video. I think that this is probably one of the most valuable real estate videos that I've shot because of all of the things one of you sent me that we went over. That, like, I've taken the time to write out some of these things. I've done videos on some of these topics, but I've not hit the whole list of like, what have I learned? So absolutely enjoyed doing this video. Be sure to like and subscribe if you guys haven't already. Again, my name is Ryan Dossey. We'll talk to you guys next time.